A small update on the coronavirus situation in Portugal. We went from 0 cases to now 9 confirmed cases, and it was all of a sudden, pretty much as I mentioned before. I didn't believe in any of the numbers that were being sent out by the Portuguese institutions and by the government that now claims that they have the full artillery ready to fight the virus, which is of course just, again, propaganda. That's all they do. And so after weeks and weeks of saying that we had absolutely no case and publicly claiming that they were placing no restrictions for people to come to Portugal from highly infected places, now we have 9 cases all of a sudden. And again, I don't even believe these numbers. I think the number is much higher. They are just spreading the usual propaganda. And it shows, especially after another event related with these institutions in Portugal, where the government, the Socialists, once again show exactly what I've been saying, which is they are controlling everything and they don't want the news, the actual reality, to be known by the public. And in this case, it's a service directly related with the national health system, which is called SNS 24. Directly translating, it would be National Health System 24, which is 24 hours a day, where people can call to this service and get some sort of advice, medical advice for whatever their situation is. And there were some criticism to this service because 25% of the calls were not being answered. All of a sudden, and after the Prime Minister claimed that you don't fire generals in the middle of a war, and he was talking about the coronavirus, this is one general that was fired. A man called Henrique Martins, which was the head of the SNS 24 service, and he was just fired. Now, who was he replaced with? You guessed it, a boy from the Socialist Party. Someone with absolutely no knowledge of the service that it's now heading. And the funny part, if you can consider this funny, this is actually tragic, but it's the reality in Portugal. The funny part is that Henrique Martins not only is not related with the Socialist Party in any way, which to a certain extent in Portugal, actually to a very large extent in Portugal, that is a problem. Because if you're not from the left or the far left, then you are a problem to be removed. And not only Henrique Martins had this problem, he was not from the Socialist Party, but he was also quite critical about how the government was handling this service and the national health system in general, but specifically this service, the SNS 24 service. Because for the past 2 years, and in direct opposition to what the government claims about ending austerity, while channels like mine prove that that is not the case. We show the numbers, we show all the available information that the end of austerity never happened. In fact, quite the opposite. We had the biggest austerity ever, applied by the left and the far left. And so when Henrique Martins was showing also that the reasons why there are limitations to this service are the constant cuts that this government, the Socialists, and in the previous 4 years, the Socialists with the far left, they have been cutting large cuts. We're talking about millions of euros being cut from these services that, of course, cannot function properly when they are receiving such large cuts. And so Henrique Martins was not from the Socialist Party, or has no affiliation with the Socialist Party, which is problem number 1. And then problem number 2, he was actually criticizing the government. He was actually criticizing the Socialists for cutting money, basically, from the service that he was heading. Joining these 2 problems, and Henrique Martins became a target to be, in this case, fired. And this is how the Socialists solve, and I use air quotes when I say solve, any problem in this country. Someone criticizes them, then they pressure whatever institution, whatever service they are heading to fire that person. And if they control the service directly, which is the case, then they simply fire the person, because no one, much like I always say, in a leftist or far leftist state, no one can criticize the state. And so the propaganda must be that everything is amazing, everything is fine, there are no coronavirus cases, there are no cuts, we have ended austerity, and so on and so forth. That's the propaganda that must be known by the public. If anyone is dissenting from this, if anyone is claiming the opposite, then they will be demonized, they will be censored, and in cases like these, they are simply fired. This is the update I wanted to make. 9 confirmed cases, and also this curious case related with Henrique Martins, a man that has 2 big problems. He's not a socialist, apparently, and he also criticizes the socialists, and that cannot be. You cannot be in a public institution if you criticize the left or the far left, and that's the reality in Portugal. It's also the reality where we have these coronavirus cases appear out of nowhere after weeks and weeks claiming that we had no cases. Anyway, I hope you like this, and I'll see you next time.